Fantastic. Okay, so welcome to this quarter's webinar with ACW, Advanced Corporate Wellness. My name is Danielle Dinkelman. I am the founder and CEO of ACW, and I'm so excited to host this roundtable discussion on employee wellness for remote teams. There's some really unique challenges that we face when we are leading remote teams, and it's just happening more and more. Post-COVID, it's our reality. So we've got some really amazing people in the room today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and let's go with Ashlan first. Tell everybody your name, your role, and your business, and anything else you want to share.
Sure. Awesome. Hi, my name is Ashlan Glazier-Anderson. I use she, her, and hers pronouns. I'm the founder and CEO of AshbeanPDX Marketing. We're a digital marketing agency that helps small business owners and nonprofits set up their marketing foundations so that they are ready to grow and scale.
Thank you, Ashlan. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Tom, can we have you go next?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Tom Burke. I'm a CPA and I'm the owner of Ledger's Bookkeeping here in Portland, Oregon. We primarily focus on member associations, nonprofits, and chambers of commerce. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Tom. Elin, let's have you introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Elin Barton. I'm the CEO and founder of Riveo Creative. We're a creative marketing firm specializing in video production and impact stories.
I love what you do, Elin. Thank you so much for being here. Shannon, and then we'll have Cindy best for last here.
I'm Shannon Berg, and I'm the founder and CEO of Berg and Associates, and we are a public relations and content firm, and we are also based in Portland, Oregon.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Hi, my name is Cindy Free, and I am the owner and CEO of HR Annie Consulting. And we also have a business called True Calling Recruitment and Background Brief. So what we do is we help employers, typically small to mid-sized employers, with whatever they need that falls under the HR umbrella. We're based out of Portland, but we have clients in about 30 or more states around the country as well.
Absolutely. That's the other cool thing about everybody in this room is not only is their team remote, but their clients are all over the country. So we will definitely have links and contact info for all of you in the description on this recording when we post it. So if anybody's like, oh, I need to talk to that person, I need help with that, we will definitely have their info for you. Okay, so remote teams. I want to hear the origin story from each of you. Why remote or hybrid? And let's just go in the same order. Let's go, and I want to hear the story because we could have done it differently, right? We could have gone traditional brick and mortar, but we chose to do it this way. So Ashlan, let's start with you.
Yeah, for me, a big thing is when my people don't all exist in the same place. So I happen to be in Portland right now. I usually live in Nevada, and I have frequently, since starting my business, worked from kind of anywhere across the United States. So it is nice not to have to report to an office. There's the expense of that, but it's also being able to retain talent. So I have one employee who often likes to work internationally, and we just set her up for success in doing that and move around meeting times, or sometimes she works at night and hangs out in places in the day. And then I've got another person who is in Portland, so we all knew each other here, and then we all kind of went to the areas that we wanted, and our clients have understood that, and we've been just kind of remote, and we started our business in the pandemic. So it was a little bit easier to start in 2021 and go that direction. I think it would have been a totally different thing if I had started prior to 2020 as well.
Yeah, right. That COVID impact, I think it sped everything up for the whole business world and just normalized Zoom and that remote work really, really fast. How about you, Tom? What's the origin story of the remote team for you?
Yeah, thank you. So we never really thought that we were going to have a traditional model. So traditional accounting firms, usually it's brick and mortar. You come in, you drop off your data, you drop off your taxes, and then maybe you have a conversation with the CPA or the tax professional. And I just never thought that made a lot of sense. You know, basically it's a data dump and it's a conversation, right? Which we can have over technology. And then COVID proved that to be the case. I remember, working and somebody's like, okay, the government shut down. Do you want to go work from home? And I was like, yes. I grabbed my computer and left and never came back, right? So I think it's just doesn't make sense. And then when you start thinking about the overhead and the cost of having your traditional firm, it really doesn't make sense. All of a sudden your margins get really small, and I like big margins. So yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Spoken like a true accountant. It does. There's so much convenience with it too. But we're going to talk about maybe some of the challenges that it brings up too, which has to be talked about. Elin, how about you? Why a remote team?
Well, we didn't start out remote. I started my business in 2009, and we do create a lot of video content. We have always been very collaborative. So back in the beginning, we were brick and mortar. We had actually, I think we've had 4 or 5 locations during the time that I've had the business, because we kept kind of growing, and then there was a little bit of a contraction in the middle there. But we didn't actually become remote until COVID hit. We actually just gave up our office recently, but our office at the end just housed our server, not so much people. And for us, technology advanced to the point where we could collaborate on videos and share files easily remotely, which wasn't the case back when we started. So it was kind of an evolution for me.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's why I ask, because some of us started our business in the middle of the pandemic, and some of us, like you, have felt and experienced that transition of having to make that change and adapt. So that's really cool to hear that was the case for you. Shannon, how about you?
Well, I started my business in 2017, and I started remote purely from a practical perspective. It was just me. It was me and some independent contractors. And I'm a mom. I have 3 kiddos under the age of 14. And it's professional services. We can work from anywhere. And so it didn't make sense for me to have an office. I was very comfortable at home. I remember before I chose to start my business, when I was exploring what I wanted to do, I went on an interview for a job, and I walked in a suit, got a name badge, and got in an elevator. And as the elevator is going up, like, the lifeblood is just draining from me, because I'm like, this isn't for me, right? And that was my background: suits every day, name badges, and elevators. And then from there, one of our earliest clients is a global technology firm, still one of our biggest clients. And they were using Zoom. I mean, they're all over the world, their teams, and they were using Zoom really early on. When we were still ready to go to our clients for meetings, they were saying, well, let's just do it on Zoom. And I remember it was really odd. I'm like, this looks weird. This feels weird. But we acclimated really early because of that core client that we had. And then it kind of became, honestly, like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. It just worked for us. There's a lot of moms on our team that have the same kind of, desire to have a little more flexibility in their life and save on drive times. Then, of course, the pandemic hit, and the beauty for us was we didn't miss a beat because we were already working in that way. So that was really one of the gifts of having always been a fully remote workplace. And we've managed to really meet everybody's needs, and it still works. So that's how we're rolling. That's how we're doing it.
Love it. I love it. That's fantastic. I love that visual, the elevator going up. Thank you. That's awesome. Okay, Cindy, what about you?
Yeah. We're just a blend of everything that everybody's saying as well. So HR Annie is a 15-year-old business. We started really small. We didn't need an office. And then as we started to grow, we recognized that just trying to get the team together was difficult. We were just meeting at, a coffee shop, or we felt like we were hijacking restaurant space or whatever. And so we got our first office a few years in, and it worked really well. But with us, we, at that time, up until the pandemic, really, we were also on site with our clients. And so that was how we scoped out our work. Was we'd meet the client, we'd decide we're all going to work together, and then we'd say, okay, well, where are you going to post us up at your office? Right. So it made sense to kind of have a hybrid work environment for our team because they were spending a lot of time with clients. So then when the pandemic hit, we continued to grow. We had more team members. We started to utilize co-working space. And of course, everybody went fully remote back home to work. We weren't going on site with clients, and we weren't even really utilizing the co-working space a whole lot because of all of the restrictions, especially here in Oregon. So we still kept this space because, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but I also wanted to make sure that if there were an employee or employees that didn't have a home environment where they felt confident and competent working from home, or they just didn't have the logistics, and I don't mean, the dog barking in the background or the kid, playing with your hair, because that was just how we all, were able to pivot, and that was great. But really just being like, am I sitting on my couch hunched over trying to be productive? And so we always kept the hybrid model so that people would have a place to work from if they needed that. But now, kind of like both of you have said, Shannon, what you said is our clients now are probably 80% remote, because that just worked, which also then allowed us to expand where we're working with clients, which is why we're in over 30 states now. And it's just sort of been this, effect of the benefits of working remote.
Yes. Awesome. I love it. I love the full spectrum. There's so many reasons why we do it the way we do it, and maybe why we had to change, and then why we stayed, right? And so much of that, I think, does tie into that employee well-being. And I think selfishly as business owners, we can say, yeah, I don't want the overhead, but also I want the flexibility. And being in professional services, yeah, it makes sense. We can go to the client. We don't need to have our own space always. So thank you for just kind of giving us that background. So I want to kind of shift the conversation into this perspective of well-being. And of course, that's my agenda. That's ACW's agenda. We're really interested in having that conversation and getting people to talk about it more, because there's so many things that we manage as business owners. And well-being is this growing piece, especially since the pandemic and the normalization of talking about mental health as well as physical health. And it's coming more and more to these smaller businesses that all of us operate. So I just want to hear from maybe 2 or 3 of you that feel like you have thoughts on this, of why does it matter? Like, why does the individual well-being of your team members matter to you as a business owner? And that might seem like a strange question, but I think it's worth maybe being a starting point. So does anybody feel like they want to kind of kick us off on that? Yeah, Cindy, go for it.
Well, for us, it's really 2 parts because of the nature of the work that we do. We're an HR consulting company. And so as much as I'm looking always internally at my own company and how we operate and what the logistics of that are, we're also trying to give the best advice to clients. And we work in a lot of different industries with a lot of different, structures of organizations that may or may not even have the option of hybrid or remote work. So in my company, there's a business reason for it, right? We want to, be smart about where we're spending money and all of that. But the truth is that I believe you have to have a balance. So all of the feasibility and the logistics and the cost savings and the efficiencies by maybe not having an office space are great, but I think really successful companies, they continually foster the health and well-being of their employees. And the side effect of that is building trusting, inclusive, happy cultures, which then rolls into higher productivity and things like that. For example, my daughter just walked out the door to go to school, and I want to be able to wave and say, bye, honey, have a good day. I didn't today, but I think that's a benefit of being a hybrid workforce. Is it's okay if you like wave to your kid on the way out the door, right? Because we're existing in a lot of different ways together. So from a personal professional standpoint as an owner, I also know how much people dedicate their life time, like their time in their life to work. And so it's really important to take care of them. And I can't imagine not having this mindset. And so, to be able to take good care of my employees, to give them the flexibility to work how it's best for them, and the opportunity to work remote also allows them to maybe work later in the day if they're not really a morning person, or work earlier in the morning if they don't want to work late, or to be flexible throughout their day. There's a lot of ways to take care of employees just beyond traditional benefits or things like that. And I think flexibility in how they do their best work is super important.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. Who else has thoughts on this? Why does it matter? What's the connection? How does the well-being of our team impact our work and our business?
I'll just jump in. I love everything you said, Cindy. To be brief, I think it's almost all that matters. And I say that because everything for me, in my experience, has flowed from that. If I have a team of high performing people who are, taken care of, who are inside of a wonderful culture that supports them, that honors their voice, where they can do their best work, where they can be their authentic selves, where, the benefits and the job and how we've structured things is all in support of that. Everything else, profits, your clients being well taken care of, everything else takes care of itself. We just were recognized as the #1 best place to work in the small business category by the Portland Business Journal. And this is our second year. This week we have our fastest growing companies awards. Last year we were 18 on the list of fastest growing private 100 companies. And I just say that as a point of evidence, because really, that's all the questionnaires ask the same thing, right? What prompted this growth, right? People. That's really the short answer. And so, I don't get everything right, certainly not on the first try, but it is a constant pursuit. How are we doing for our team?
Yeah. Helping them be taken care of, and then giving them the space to be the high performing people that they are. That's really, that kind of boils down this question of well-being. And there's lots of ways that we can do that, and that we do that as businesses. With ACW, in the consulting and the client relations that we have with our clients, we kind of break it down into 3 categories. And it's permission, which is kind of those cultural norms that are happening in your organization of, yeah, we prioritize our self-care, and we are allowed to be humans that wave goodbye to our kids on the bus. So those cultural permissions around well-being. And then the second one is policies. Like, do you have written policies around, what your PTO policies are, all sorts of different things that are more formal in your company that really show how you're taking care of them and how you're prioritizing this culturally. And then we've got the programs, right? And that's where we look at the traditional benefit stack. We want our people to feel taken care of and supported. And, that's when we see companies that are kind of going above and beyond with not only just going bare minimum on things. And Cindy, I'm sure you see this all the time with your clients of looking like we need to send a message with what we're providing. So yeah, the health plan, the EAP, any other programs that you can add, that's kind of where ACW's program fits in. But we can look at it from those 3 perspectives, right? And if we just do one and not the others, it doesn't quite work. They all fit together. So I'm curious, as you all think of your teams, and especially maybe those we haven't heard from Tom, Elin, Ashlan, what are some specific things in one of those areas that jump out at you of like, oh yeah, we're doing that and it's making a difference. Our team really appreciates it. We can feel the difference it makes in the culture. Elin.
Yeah, I can go. Love everything that's being said, and I agree with everything. That this has been a great conversation so far. But for our team, I'm very pleased to offer them really good benefits, flexibility, and the work from home, I guess, perk. But we offer a ton of benefits, really good health insurance, and even as a small company, we pay 90% of. It's very expensive for us, but I'm really, really, really happy that we can do that. We have unlimited pay time off. We have 3 volunteer days a year. We just have all these benefits. We do little things like we pay for their Amazon Prime. We pay for so many things. We have dental insurance in addition to the health. We just have all. I can't think of all the things. I should have had a list, but all of that is definitely helping me retain talent and attract talent, and the flexibility that we're able to offer for when people have to take their child to a doctor's appointment or go to their own doctor appointment or whatever they need to do. We really try to be flexible. And I see the flip side of that, where the employees are very dedicated to what they're doing. They're engaged, they're present, they're working hard. I love my team right now. I never want to lose them. So it's important to me to keep offering these benefits and flexibility. I don't see any other way. I don't want to change anything that we're doing except to make it better.
That's powerful. And I think that's a really powerful message to share. And that's part of why I wanted to get you all together talking about this, because we need to normalize the fact that there is, especially in small teams, I think we get more scared about this as the companies scale, but in these small teams, we're very relationship-based business people, right? We know our people and they know us. So what I hear from what you're saying, Elin, is the more flexibility you gave them, it comes back to you in that engagement and that commitment and that follow through, and the professionalism it's not lacking at all because you're unlimited PTO freaks people out as decision makers and leaders. So I love that we can maybe demystify that a little bit and put some trust in these professionals that we're hiring. When you treat people like people, that usually comes back to you in a positive way. So yeah, Tom, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so Ledger's is really, really small. Like we don't have a big benefit package. One day, hopefully we'll get there. But what we do have is like a good set of core values, and one of them is employees first. And that's just because my partners and I have seen or worked in companies where employees weren't first, and it was a hard place to work at. And so, although we're very small, it is something that we're always thinking about. And so, we don't have a huge benefit package at all. But one thing that I'm always working with is like working directly with, and we don't have employees, we have contractors, right? So, very, very small. But we do things like, hey, 30 minutes a week, we get together and it's open discussion. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's your capacity like? Are you working over 40 hours? I really don't want you to. In accounting, it happens all the time. And you're juggling, the stress at work, at home. And so I think even though you're small, you can still think about the people first, right? So just having on paper and just sharing it with your contractors, sharing it with your employees, I think they'll at least feel that you are trying to do the best you can, even though you're very small and can't offer everything right away. And hopefully they'll want to stay with you on that journey. So one day you can be with them. It's like, oh my gosh, we have health insurance now. Welcome aboard. All these little things as you grow and hit those milestones.
Yeah, it's about laying that foundation, right? And it comes right back to what Shannon shared of like, it's everything. If we are really truly looking at each other as human beings that have these basic needs, and making sure that the way we're running our organizations are harmonious with that, yeah, it'll all work out. Yeah, thank you, Tom. Ashlan.
I think for me, when I started my business, one of my biggest gut checks was, do I have policies and procedures that would make me want to work here? And that's something that I've kind of led with the entire time. So we have, 2 times a year that we take an entire week off. So the last week of June, I mean, every single time I've taken that week off, I've been moving between states. So it's kind of one year. I would like to not be transferring my life from state to state. And then we take the last week of the year off, the kind of like from Christmas on until New Year's. So if New Year's Day, I think this next year falls on a Wednesday, then we get the Monday, Tuesday and that Wednesday off. So some years we're luckier and it's more than, 7 days. Some years it's shorter, but we keep that pretty consistent. We've done unlimited PTO. I find that nobody really takes people worry that people are just going to take like a month off. And it's like, no, folks take, a Friday here or, a Wednesday there because they're needing to do something. You can actually implement these things without feeling like folks are going to, take advantage of you. And that's like the biggest thing that I think people always worry about. I think a new thing that I'm thinking of for next year is not only doing the unlimited PTO, but making a required number of days of PTO that you have to take. So, because there are some companies and organizations that have unlimited PTO, but people still never take time off because there's just such a huge volume of work and there's no work-life balance. And so folks are kind of scared to use that benefit. So making sure that folks are actually leveraging some of those benefits. And it's interesting that we talked a little bit about healthcare and things. I figured out a way to be really creative, and we do a healthcare reimbursement because we exist in 3 different states. I run the numbers every year and take it back to the team for decision-making purposes to see if we can get kind of healthcare that works for all 3 of us. And it doesn't always. So we just do a healthcare reimbursement through, cash that supplies 75% paid, which is what we were getting in our previous organizations as well. So trying to make sure that we're being creative with our solutions that we're bringing into our businesses too.
Yeah. And that creativity helps you stay competitive, right? And I love the question that you posed of, do I have policies and procedures in place that would make me want to work in my own company? I think that is such a powerful question to ask. And on the note of the unlimited PTO, we see this all the time that, yeah, I love like having that threshold of like, you must take at least this many days off. And what we really have to do as business owners too is looking at the operations of the business and how that overlaps with these more soft, fluffy employee wellness policies we want to have, because they are absolutely connected. So if you have unlimited PTO, but you do not have the practices in place, the handbooks, the checklists that somebody could cover for that person that's taking that day or week off, then we have a problem. So these absolutely have to fit together and look at both kind of the soft and the hard business things. Thank you for highlighting that. Hey, Tom, you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, just real quickly. I do think solid procedures for somebody who's just joining a remote team is paramount. Like you can't just throw them to the wolves on day one and just like, hey, you work at night, I'll work in the morning. Don't text me, don't email me, like you figure it out. Having procedures and strong checklists, it's that employee first. They come in and they feel supported, allowing them to not only have these great checklists and things. We use Tango for that, by the way, but also like they can text me. Hey, if you have any problems at all, text me throughout the day. We'll deal with it. I'll jump on a Teams call and we'll handle it. So that employee first mentality is like giving them all the resources, all the opportunity for help that they need. Just making that a policy can really make them feel supported. And you're not, right next to them. You're not in the same spot for them, but they feel supported. Right. So I think, yeah, strong policies are really powerful.
Yeah, those policies, those written checklists, some of us hate them because it feels tedious. But I think you highlighted something really important, Tom, is that is the replacement for you sitting right next to them in that traditional work setting. What we can do instead is, here's how we do this. Here's the expectations. And it's not you bossing them around, it's you supporting them. I think that's a really great distinction. Shannon and then Elin. We're getting excited now. I like this.
Yeah, I wanted to add to the unlimited PTO discussion, because what I'm hearing a lot of is, every team is so unique. And especially in a small business, you do have the opportunity to really know your people and know what's working and what is able to be adopted and utilized and is benefiting all. We started with an unlimited PTO policy. And for us, what happened was I was having inequitable outcomes in the use of the unlimited PTO because I've got a couple of people in my firm who are some of my oldest friends. And so if you're one of my oldest friends and we've been working together and we worked in a firm before I started my company together, you might feel confident taking, a certain level of PTO. But if you're just out of college, this is your first foot in the door, you're really trying to, show that you can do it, you may not have that same level of confidence. So in my team, that's what the outcome of the unlimited PTO was. And so how I remedied that, and I think some of these other ideas, mandating a certain amount be taken is a great idea as well. The approach I took was to instead establish a bank of PTO, and I looked at usage and then went above whatever the highest usage was. So our PTO now exceeds what anybody used with the unlimited PTO. And we have a week of rest at the end of the year, just like Ashlan. So it ends up being a little more than 8 weeks when you add it all together. And then when you hit 5 years, you get another week. So a couple of team members coming up on 5 years. So they'll jump to a little over 9 weeks. The other thing we did was we last year moved to a 36-hour work week. So we end at noon on Fridays. And that's just it. And, people love that. And we're just as productive. We haven't, lost any productivity. And it gives people just a little bit of time back in their week, even just for themselves, where their kids are getting home from school or whatever it is. We also have a 401k with a 4% match. We cover 100% of healthcare. Healthcare is obviously huge. And then we also established an annual wellness stipend. So up to $500 just for anything that you want to buy for yourself. Could be running shoes, could be athletic clothing, could be protein powder, whatever it is that helps you be healthy. So you have a little bit of money to spend that you don't have to negotiate within your family budget. That's just for you. And, I hope to grow that more, but I'm always challenging myself, like, how much more, like I joke sometimes, I'm like, I want to see how far I can go before I just tank the whole thing. And my boys are like, don't do that. I'm like, I'm just kidding. But, I think we can challenge ourselves to be more generous, to trust, somebody I think mentioned trust. And, to see what you can do and to stretch yourself a little bit, overcome whatever fear you might have of like, wanting to maintain control or worrying about the bottom line, because it really does more for those two things than anything else you can invest in. Really, truly. So those are some of the things. We also order books from Powell's once a month, and they can't be like books about the profession. It just has to be something that you want to read. Could be a cookbook, could be a novel. But we do that, and then sometimes we check in on what are you reading. And we also have two forums every week, 2 standing 1 hour all team meetings. And one of them is dedicated just to issue processing. So what is it that's coming up for you in your work that is challenging you or that you're struggling with, that you can bring forward and we have a structure for that. And you can get the benefit of your entire team supporting you in identifying possible solutions or a way forward or an approach. And there's some accountability built into that as well. And that's been a really beautiful space for our team as well.
So powerful. I saw Cindy taking notes, and I know that everybody that is watching this now or in the recording is going to be taking notes, because it's so powerful to hear very specific, tried and true, and lessons learned. We tried this and then we pivoted to this. There's very specific things that feel new and scary, and it does take a lot of trust. I want to get to Cindy, and then I want to play devil's advocate a little bit, because I want to get into, have you ever experienced some backlash or some some negative responses from this generosity, from this trust that we're expanding and extending to our folks. I kind of want to like play the other side of that, because I'm wondering if people that are going to hear this might be thinking, yeah, but I've seen this, or I've heard of this. So Cindy, I want to get to what you were going to share.
Okay, maybe I can give us our segue to that too. So I was just going to kind of acknowledge that I think we're all kind of starting from the same foundation of however we're offering benefits because we're trying to take good care of our team. Whether we're really tiny and we can just afford to add on one little thing each year, or we've gotten to the point where we're like, hey, challenge me, beat my benefits package, man. Like, I'm going to take my business being so generous, right? And Tom's probably, you know, dying right now as a CFO. But I think, you know, how I wrap that up, like my goal as an employer, because we offer a lot of amazing benefits as well, is just to have something that holistically it's accessible to everybody, but certain benefits might be more meaningful than a different benefit depending on who the employee is or what they have going on in their life. And so to kind of segue into the, you know, the what could go wrong is definitely as an employer and the owner who's, you know, tasked with deciding how much you're going to offer and how nice you're going to be and how you're going to take care of this amazing team, it's important to ask them. I have this little thought in my head whenever I think about a new benefit is just kind of like ask them and let your team kind of guide you, because I've implemented some benefits in the past that I personally thought, excuse me, were going to be so amazing. And actually nobody either utilized them or kind of cared about it so much, but it cost me a heck of a lot of money. And I think once you give, this is another kind of hard part, is once you give something, it's really hard to take it away. And so you're always trying to do, you know, this or something better, even if this isn't really giving the whole ROI that you were hoping for. So I think with kind of back to the remote, you know, or hybrid work environment and benefits tied to that, for me, I've just had to make sure that making sure we still have connection is very, very intentional. So to me, one of the biggest cons to going like at one point, like during the pandemic, when you just couldn't work together, it was really hard to build connection. And we hired a lot of people during that time. And then after we got back into, you know, a different kind of environment, which was more opportunities to be together, we actually lost a couple of people. And my hypothesis was because they came at a time when things were so reactive and responsive, and especially in HR, we were just like, what is this thing? And how do we get people through it? And so when it kind of got like, oh, this is our new normal, they weren't used to having any connection like we did before. And so they're like, I don't really need to come in the office, you know, or whatever. I think that was part of it. So for us, I think just being really intentional about how do we connect, even if we don't see each other in person very often. And then also, I think there's been times where maybe people are going through things that are more difficult, and you can kind of hide behind the remote work. Whereas in the past, I think if somebody was going through a hard time, your team is there to be kind of that soft landing. And they know because you're together and you're getting in a little side conversation about your day or whatever. And so it's just a lot of like, you're very on point, and the meeting starts at 9, it gets over at 10, we're talking about work and not as much time to just really get to know each other. So we've tried to put some things in place to remedy that.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges with the remote setting. And Elin, I know you and I have actually talked about this before, so I hope you'll share in addition to what came to mind.
Oh, okay. I can't remember exactly what we talked about. But what I was thinking about is, as we talk about taking away benefits if they're not working out, they're not giving you the results that you're looking for, and also this connection. What's coming to mind for me is that with my team now being 100% remote and they live all over the place, we came from a very collaborative place where we used to have our office set up so all the desks were kind of like in a circle so people could share ideas, and we're a creative team, so that was important to us. These days we have a daily meeting, which when I first started doing it I was like, what, a daily meeting, too many meetings. But actually we really like it because it helps us feel connected, check in on the projects, check in on each other. We always start with a little like personal, like, hey, what's going on with you? What's good? What's bad? Share. So at least we feel some connection. We get together in person quarterly. So far, including, I have one employee that lives in Europe. And so far she's been coming in quarterly. I don't know if she'll always be able to, but it's kind of worked out. So at this time, so we'll see. That's my intention, is that she'll be able to continue. We do, next time we get together in the beginning of October, we're going to do a volunteer day together. So we're really excited about that. But one thing that's helped us, I think, with analyzing which benefits should stay and which should go is we started doing EOS this past year, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so we have another meeting on Fridays where we check in on all the like big goals for the company, and everybody has their personal goals. And doing this system has caused me to become really open about financials too. And so like we're all kind of working together towards our goals, including financial goals. And it has kind of helped them being the employees, become more of the decision, also looking at things fiscally, like, is it worth it to keep this subscription? Is it worth it to keep this, benefit that nobody's using? Like, should we put this money elsewhere? And that's been a really interesting evolution. Like at first I was kind of scared to share financial information for many years. And now that I started doing it, I found it very freeing. And it's caused people to be even more invested, in the company, not just financially, but just, I don't know if it's emotionally or, they're just like really, they seem very invested in where the company's going, not just for themselves.
That's amazing. Yeah, that
makes
financial
sense.
transparency. Speaking of other things that freak business leaders out, that's a big one.
It freaked me out for a long time, but
thank you for sharing your experience with that. Again, I just think that's so valuable for other leaders to hear of like, oh, somebody else did it and it didn't break it. It actually made it better. You actually got more engagement from that. That's really, really cool. And yes, I remember you shared exactly what I had remembered you and I had talked about, that you do take time at the beginning of your meeting, a daily meeting even. And again, it's already been said.
And they're short, to clarify.
Yeah, how short are they? How long are those daily meetings?
We do a longer meeting on Mondays and Fridays, but the other 3 days are like 15 minutes, if that. Yeah. They're really short, just a touch base.
Quick check-ins. What I loved about what you shared there, and this is my coaching background coming in, is not only that you're sharing what's good, but that you're also sharing what's bad. And it's so valuable to celebrate yourself and to celebrate each other. And there's so much connection that comes from that, and vulnerability too. And the vulnerability that comes from, my grandpa just passed away, or actually, my kid just, lost his soccer game last night. Whatever it is, that invitation, again, that cultural permission to normalize talking about both the things that are good and the things that are bad can go so far to letting people feel comfortable being vulnerable and honest when things do start to go downhill, and they may reach out and say, something's really hard right now. So thank you for sharing that, Elin. Tom, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to Elin touched on some great points. Number one, transparency. That's also a value of ours. I've never worked for an accounting firm that has shown the financials, which doesn't make any sense to me. Like, we're all accountants. We all understand what the point of business is, but you're hiding it from us. So like, we don't know if we're succeeding. We don't know where we're going. And so why am I staying here? Like, what is the point? I don't know the score, right? And so one of the things I've always shared with the people we work with is like our financials. They don't really ask questions about it, but they can talk to me about it and discuss it. I just wanted to be completely transparent, like, hey, this is where we're at. We're not doing good. Are we doing good? That kind of a thing. This is where we expect to be in, 6 months or a year. So they have a feeling of like, hey, everything's going the right direction. And if it's not, they really have the right to know if it's not going the right direction. Maybe they should jump ship. So going back to being employees first, I think being transparent is a powerful way to show that you care for them and they can make their own decisions otherwise. Then discussing the daily meeting. I was part of a remote team that did a daily huddle, which is literally everybody gets 3 minutes and we discussed what are you struggling with? What are the things you're going to get done today? And then what are you grateful for? And that last one, being grateful for something, man, people just brought up all sorts of different topics about what's going on in their life, what's going on in work, and getting that cadence of every single day really brought you closer to that person. And when we stopped doing it, I felt like we missed something, like, because we were just definitely getting closer with each other because it spawned other conversations after the meeting to discuss people's personal lives, which you don't get because that water cooler effect is no longer there. You can't, BS with somebody at the water cooler and get that culture, get that touch points that some of these people we actually spend more time with than our families. So it's important to have that connection.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I like the specific prompts too, because sometimes, it's hard for people to facilitate. And as the leaders of these remote teams, we are facilitators. We get to decide what's going to happen in that meeting. So I think it's really helpful to hear specific prompts. One that came to mind, if you've ever heard of rose, bud, and thorn exercise, right? So sharing something, the thorn is something that might be a little painful. The bud is something that's kind of new, something that's emerging. And the rose is like, yeah, something that's just really going well, maybe something that you're celebrating or something you're grateful for. It's so helpful to have kind of tangible frameworks we can use in our teams. All right, I want to be sensitive to time. We're getting close to the top of the hour. I'm so grateful for all of you being here and being willing to be transparent and share some of the ups and the downs of leading these teams. I want to just wrap up, just maybe rapid fire advice. Like if somebody else, similar situation, business leader, they've heard this conversation and they are just not sure. They're just not sure about this philosophy. What advice would you give them on maybe moving more in this direction of prioritizing your people? Cindy, go ahead.
Okay, I definitely have opinions about this because we've helped so many other companies determine what their remote work or hybrid work environments could look like. And I would say my number one question or my number one advice that I would start the conversation with an employer, if logistically they're able to even consider a remote or hybrid environment, would be don't assume every employee wants this, because it is very popular. It is very efficient in a lot of ways. It can be. It's becoming less of a benefit and more of an expectation in a lot of industries. So it really can make the difference of attracting and retaining people. But there are people who don't work well remotely. There are people who do not have an environment in their home where they can do their best work remotely. In fact, to get really, serious about it, there are people who frankly should not be spending the majority of their life at home. And so if an employer wants to provide or have a remote work, consider if there's an alternative that you can offer as well. And so like co-working space or something like that. And I guess like I'll just let everybody else share their advice, but it's just a real, it's becoming a big assumption that this is what, if you can have it, you should do it. And this is what people want and expect, but it's not always the best thing for everybody.
Wise words, Cindy. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, Ashlan, what's your advice?
One is talk to other business owners. Most of the things that I have learned are things that other people are doing, and not be afraid to pilot and test things and then leave them behind if they're not working. So like what Cindy said, I've been hearing from folks lately who are switching jobs or just got laid off who are like, I want the hybrid environment because I do want a place to like, leave my home, or they have another partner who is working at home and it's like we don't have two offices, so we can't, somebody's on the dining room table and somebody's got the office, and we're doing this kind of switching and things like that. So not everybody has like the perfect remote setup. And then I think the other thing is listening to your teams. So one of the things that I shared with Danielle this morning is we have it on our annual review now of what are some additional benefits, because I'm thinking of things that I'm like, oh, I would like that, but listening to your teams, making sure it's valuable to everyone, and whether or not it should be something that's brought in, or maybe there are things that work for some and not others, and then everybody gets their own little thing that they have, because the thing with equity is it's giving people what they individually need to be successful, not everybody gets the same things. So thinking a little bit more creatively in that sense.
Good. Thank you. Beautiful. All right. Any parting words of advice from you, Tom?
Sure. I would just say be intentional about what you're doing. Our business, day one, we knew we were going remote. So the employees and contractors that we have, they have to be okay with it, because we're not gonna have that remote, or not, sorry, brick and mortar establishment for you to come and work at. We might do something where some sort of hybrid or work where they can come work someplace together. But generally, we're being very intentional about being remote and then providing support about that space in which we work at. So I'm always thinking about how can we do it. One of the things that is an impediment is that information exchange between employees that you get at a brick and mortar establishment, especially if you're a young employee and you're just starting your career. How do you get that mentorship? So I'm thinking about ways of how to do that without bringing them physically together, but having that daily interaction so that they can continue to grow. Just be intentional. Always be thinking about how you can support your employees while you go through this transition, or from day one, you decide to just go for it.
Well said. Well said. Let's go Shannon and then Elin, and then we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much.
I would say that I think, healthy workplaces come in all shapes and sizes. And I think a key, something that's been I think critical for me, is what I would call like attunement, just being tuned in and listening, and not being afraid to try new things, but really tuning into what your people need and what's working for them. In our workplace, people have said, when I'm working, I want to be where I'm most efficient, because we tried some options of getting together once a week to work in a place. They said, I really just want to work where I have my setup, but I still want to be with people connected in person. So we do once a month Friday Fun Day, and we get together also quarterly. And, we've had to kind of find our way to the mix that works for us. So I think just tuning in and really thinking about your people and what's working, and not being afraid to ask those questions everybody has so wisely pointed out, and listening is the key.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Elin, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, if you do decide to be a remote team, you do have to be very intentional about building your culture and building up that support for your current employees and for future employees. We're always thinking ahead and making sure that we have like procedures in place, SOPs, so that somebody can come in and learn the job. We're collectively thinking about what is the next hire, what is that person in that seat that's going to best serve the company, and how are we going to support them. So it's possible to have a great culture even in a remote setting, but you do have to be very intentional and work at it and make sure you maintain that connection and support of your employees. Just show up, care, listen, And it can be very fulfilling and wonderful.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want the transcript of this recording because there was so much that was said today that needs to be shared more. So thank you again, every single one of you, for being with me and having this conversation. I hope that you connect with each other. This is the first time many of you have even met each other. So please connect. And again, we will put contact info for you all in the description when we post this on YouTube. We'll be back again in 3 months with a quarterly webinar of some kind from ACW. And in the meantime, be well and take care of yourselves. Thank you so much.
Hey, Danielle.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you.